Museums hold a lot of history, and museums always change what they have inside as pieces of art and history are moved from one museum to the other. But this isn't the only thing that moves to museums. Some of these places seem to become haunted, and most likely from spirits of the past trapped or bound to the art or objects that visit them. With that said, check out these 5 most haunted museums in the world. Before we begin, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get notified every day for more amazing content. With that being said, let's begin. Number 5. Torquay Museum in Devon, England. Torquay Museum in Devon, England is a very atmospheric building, which was purpose-built as a museum in 1874. It has a fascinating history, with around 350,000 amazing objects and artifacts, including Britain's oldest human fossil, Devon's only human mummy of a 4-year-old boy who died 2,500 years ago, and Britain's only Agatha Christie gallery, including some of her personal effects. There are also some fascinating man-made artifacts dating back from 500,000 years ago up to the Victorian era, many of which have a rich and unusual history, as well as human remains. The museum has also been known as a very productive venue for paranormal groups, attracting extensive media coverage of unusual activity witnessed and recorded. There have been a number of significant sightings and incidents, including CCTV footage of books and leaflets flying off the shelves of the museum's shop, 2 photos of guests taken in the Devon Farmhouse Gallery and Explorers Gallery, fingerprints spontaneously appearing on the inside of the museum's mummy case, which hasn't been opened in 9 years, sightings of an apparition walking through a bookcase in the museum's library, footsteps and banging in unoccupied storerooms, and some interesting contacts via spirit boards. In 2015, paranormal groups were busy snapping up lots of shots in the museum during the ghost hunting event. When they headed back home to check the photos they'd taken, they discovered some spooky shot of what looks to be an old woman in old white clothing rising from the floor and casting her eyes down towards a light. From the angle of the photograph, it looks like she's submerged into the floor, almost like she's below floor level. There was no one else present when the photo was taken, so we're at a loss to explain it. The mysterious photo was taken at around midnight in front of the fireplace in the room, which is set up as a traditional Devon farmhouse. All of the furniture and equipment has had a lot of human interaction, and maybe that's where the energies come from. It's a bit of a mystery, and there seems to be no other explanation. The lady in white, though, might not be the only spirit at the museum. Employees report seeing another female figure in blue. Number 4. Pharmacy Museum in New Orleans. Located at 514 Chartres Street, the New Orleans Pharmacy Museum is a popular attraction for tourists visiting New Orleans. Since the 1950s, this museum's been just the place, offering a look at some incredible samples of centuries-old medical treatments, equipment, and medicines. As soon as you walk in, you're quickly taken aback by the immense amount of items the museum has to offer. The walls are filled with antique medicine bottles containing everything from standard aspirins to St. John the Conqueror's root and dragon's blood for voodoo practitioners who secretly stopped at the apothecary to replenish their supplies. What you might not see are the ghosts which haunt the Pharmacy Museum. For years, people have been reported having paranormal activity inside of the Pharmacy Museum. According to the history, in 1823, there was a pharmacy opened by Louis Dufilo in the present-day location of the Pharmacy Museum. Later, that location was sold to the Dr. Joseph Dupas, where he lived until his death in 1867 from syphilis. One of the ghosts of the Pharmacy Museum is said to be Dr. Dupas. According to local legend, Dupas imposed shocking experiments on pregnant slaves, and other people have stated that he performed voodoo rites within the property itself as well. Today, it's said that Dr. Dupas's ghost haunts the Pharmacy Museum after it closes. His ghost is seen wearing a brown suit, and most oftentimes a matching brown top hat too. His ghost appears to be a man in his mid-60s. He's said to be short and stocky with a mustache. His spirit's responsible for throwing books, moving items that are on display in the museum, and triggering the alarm system even in the dead of night. Staff and visitors have reported being softly nudged or pushed as they climbed up the stairs. But Dr. Dupas' ghost is not the only ghost that appears at the museum. According to employee reports, there are also ghosts of 2 children that have been seen inside the building and out in the courtyard behind the building. They're believed to be the spirits of a little brother and sister, children of Louis Dufilo, a former owner of the location. Both kids would have died during the time the Dufilo family lived at this location. Although most feel that no serious threat resides there, the New Orleans Pharmacy Museum definitely has its fair share of encounters from the other side. Fortunately, the most intense encounter might be a gentle nudge as opposed to flying medieval medical instruments. Number 3. The Cleveland Museum of Art. The Cleveland Museum of Art, one of the largest and most important art institutions in the United States, was built in 1916 by local architects Hubble and Benes as a Greek revival pavilion situated at the head of a pastoral park and lagoon landscape. The museum is renowned for the quality and breadth of its collection, which includes almost 45,000 objects and spans 6,000 years of achievement in the arts. Having recently completed an ambitious multi-phase renovation and expansion project across its campus, the museum is a significant international forum for exhibitions, scholarship, performing arts, and art education. It's one of the top comprehensive art museums in the nation and free of charge to all. The Cleveland Museum of Art also seems to be an attractive location for ghostly residents of all sorts. The museum records purported paranormal events, and it published a blog post in 2010 detailing the most common happenings. There are some ghost stories that are collected by Carolyn Avani, Protection Services Operation Manager, who keeps a record of mysterious events that occur in the museum. The museum's Director of Design and Architecture, Jeffrey Streen, captured on photo a Claude Monet look-alike figure standing on a balcony overlooking the exhibition space, directly above a vintage image of the artist himself. It's supposed to be the specter of Monet who returned to watch over his work. Some museum employees have reported seeing one of the Cleveland Museum of Art's former directors, William Mathewson Milliken, walking through one of the 1916 building galleries. The shadowy figure was wearing a tweed jacket with elbow patches and carried a folder underneath his arm. The subject of Portrait of Jean-Gabriel Dutil at the signing of the Treaty of Vienna, an oil painting by Jacques-André Joseph Haved, has also been sighted observing his own likeness. And though the gallery space where the painting previously hung had often been prey to electrical and mechanical issues, when the painting was placed in storage, the issues stopped. Museum employees realized it was Milliken by looking through old photographs in the museum archives. In one of the museum's galleries, night watchmen for many decades reported that flashlights would go dark as they entered the space, and then would turn back on again once they left the room. During the recent renovation of the gallery, contract workmen would report that their hard hat lights would go out when they walked in the room and turned back on as they exited. The workmen had no knowledge of the night watchman's reports. Number 2. The Museum of the Albemarle in Elizabeth City, North Carolina. The Museum of the Albemarle, which is located in Elizabeth City, North Carolina, is a unique history museum that discovers the 10,000 years of local history. Lots of artifacts, illustrations, and hands-on activities give life to the culture of the region, defined by its closeness to one of the world's largest freshwater sounds. It's not the new museum building itself that plays host to otherworldly denizens. It's the transplanted Jackson House, according to paranormal investigator Mark Anderson of North Carolina Paranormal Research. He told that he was first drawn to the site because of some of its antique items, including several possessions that once belonged to a young woman who was murdered in Elizabeth City in 1901 and dumped in a river. The culprit was never found. Her spirit might still linger by her old possessions. Jackson House was first constructed back in the 18th century by a North Carolina family named Jackson. It was dismantled and moved to the Albemarle Museum site in 2005, but its unique contents seem to have relocated spirits too. Staff have reported so many strange sightings and noises that paranormal experts were called in to investigate. According to Ann Burgess Jennings, who was working at the front desk of the museum when some woman, a visitor of the museum, asked directions to the bathroom. Anne was an out-of-towner, so she knew very little, if anything, about the local history there. When the woman came back 5 minutes later, she told Anne that she met a man in the back hallway. The man was described as old, with very white hair. The woman told Jennings that he had shared stories about the museum with her. The woman described the man's baseball cap and a rose he was holding. He wore a shirt and shorts and talked about his wife Florence, and then he put his hat to his chest and told her local stories. When the man was finished, the woman reported that he turned and walked away, disappearing at the end of the hall. Investigators suppose that was a spirit of Fred Fearing, who was former server of the museum board. People that knew Fearing know that he loved history and was a big supporter of the museum. He was 93 when he passed away in 2007, but he made a point that he would always take care of the museum. Number 1. Frederick Remington Art Museum. The Frederick Remington Art Museum, located at 303 Washington Street in Ogdensburg, New York, houses a comprehensive collection of original Remington paintings, sketches, and sculptures, as well as a broad array of personal effects and correspondences that serve to bring the artist and his vision to life. Like many historical houses turned museums, the Frederick Remington Museum may play host to a few otherworldly denizens. The main building of the Frederick Remington Art Museum was built in 1810 by David Parrish. He resided in the home until 1816. Other Parrish Remington's family members followed and occupied the property into the 1860s. The museum was founded as the Remington Art Memorial in 1923. According to the museum's executive director Laura A. Foster, the ghost of Amerigo Vespucci still haunts the museum's halls. Hope you enjoyed the video, Top 5ers. If you haven't already, check out our other channel, The Brilliant, to enjoy even more amazing list videos. There will be a link in the description, so make sure you go check that out.